Karina, I think you're still muted. There we go.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Karina, I'm in New Orleans and I'm just looking to get better at biking in traffic.
Awesome. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself? Eric is another League certified instructor, and he's kind of going to be assisting me today. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, please type them into the chat, and Eric will be there on hand to respond to your questions. Eric, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hey y'all. Sorry for the lack of picture or video, but I'm here. Glad to be a part of this again today. And yeah, I'm in LCI. I went through this same class alongside of doing a couple other Bike Easy coursework and things like that. And I really enjoy it. So yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
Thanks, Eric. Heidi, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself? You might need to unmute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi Saul. I'm actually from New Orleans, Louisiana, but I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I still feel a part of the cycling community of New Orleans and would love to learn more about cycling safely.
Nice. James, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey folks, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hey, I was having problems getting the video going, but I'm new to biking in general and just wanted to learn more about the safety aspects and how to be as safe as I can while I'm riding.
Awesome. Hey, John and Aline, everyone was just introducing themselves. Would y'all like to introduce yourselves?
Program and operations manager for Bike Easy. And I'm also an LCI and just taking this kind of as a refresher also to get some tips and feedback on how we can continue doing awesome virtual workshops.
And I'm John. I'm also an LCI, and I'm looking at the class because I wanted to see the format, how it was kind of going, and then also because I think it's a cool class. Even though I've co-taught it a couple of times, I've taken it myself, and why not? You know, I can do it from the comfort of my home. So awesome.
Nice. All right, we got a couple more folks. Karen, you want to introduce yourself again?
Sure. This is Karen Marie Jones, and I work for the LSU Ag Center in Jefferson Parish, and I've done some work with Laura and Lauren in the school system with bike safety, and it's been really fun. The kids really got a lot out of it. We even had some kids that never rode a bike before that are riding, and it's very exciting. So just wanted to gain some more knowledge, and maybe one day I'll be an LCI. I don't know. You never know. Thanks for having us, though.
Awesome. And Marion, hi. Welcome. Would you like to say hi? You might need to unmute yourself.
Marion Moore. I've been a Bike Easy member for a while. I think I even invited them to my neighborhood at least once, so we had a little class. But just coming in because I am just now getting back to riding the bike again for exercise since my gym is closed. So just to see what's going on.
Awesome. Hey, Matt, I saw you just joined us. Everyone else just introduced themselves. Would you like to quickly say hi and introduce yourself for the new folks? Remember to unmute yourself. I got you. Matt, do you want to say hi? Okay, having a little trouble hearing you, so might want to adjust that audio. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. So this is session 2 of our Smart Biking Basics virtual workshop. First time ever doing this. So we adjusted the curriculum slightly from what was posted on the Facebook event. So if you missed yesterday's, we did record the session, and we're going to be posting them online as probably a blog post on the Bike Easy website later this week. So if you missed yesterday, we covered more just sort of things about the bike, how to select your bike, how to make sure your bike fits you, the kind of equipment and gear that you're going to want to have when you're going for a bike ride. But today we're going to cover more of the handling of the bike, the rules of the road, principles of traffic law, kinds of hazards you might expect on the road, and how to avoid those hazards. So I love this stuff, and I hope you guys will too. And just some housekeeping stuff again. Try to keep your microphone muted when you're not talking so there's not weird background noise. And if you have a question, please post it in the chat. Eric's going to be watching the chat to respond to any of y'all's questions. Yeah, feel free to chime in. So I'm going to also, so if you weren't here yesterday, I'm going to share a link to a PDF file. So this is the League of American Bicyclists Smart Cycling Manual. Normally, if we were having this class in person, I would give y'all an updated physical copy of this manual, but this is the best we're going to do for right now. And just a reminder, normally this class is a prerequisite for that League Cycling Instructor Seminar. And here, let me throw in a link about information about becoming a League Cycling Instructor as well, if this is something y'all are interested in. So normally this class, the Smart Biking class, is partially classroom component, the kind of stuff we're discussing today, and partially a longer on-bike component where we actually do bike handling drills, go out for a group ride. So right now we're just offering the classroom portion as an online session that we did today and yesterday, and hopefully again in the future. And then once we can all meet in person again, hopefully soon, we can do, we'll offer that on-bike session as well. And so once y'all complete this full Smart Biking set of workshops, you get a Smart Cycling certificate, and then you are eligible to sign up for that League Cycling Instructor seminar. So feel free to talk to me, shoot me an email, type in the chat if y'all have any more questions about that. All right, so let's get started with the rules of the road. Okay, here we go, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. All right, everyone sees that? Great. All right. So we're just gonna kind of go over the basic rules of the road, things you always want to keep in mind when you're riding, and then we're gonna dive into some of these details a little bit more a little later with the principles of traffic law. So number 1 rule of the road, follow the law. The laws exist for a reason. And your safety and the perception of people on bikes depend on you. You know, people, however they're getting around are gonna have a better opinion of people on bikes if you're, being respectful, predictable, visible, right? Another important thing to remember is that you always have the same rights and duties as motorists. We like to teach people a phrase that is, cyclists fare best when they act as and are treated as drivers of vehicles. I like to ask kids, do you think bikes are vehicles? And sometimes they're not sure, but the answer is yes, bikes are vehicles. We're just not motor vehicles. So that means we have to follow all the same rules, but we have all the same responsibilities. So that means we have to obey all the traffic signals, stop signs, and we always want to ride with traffic. I know some folks were taught to ride against traffic. Very dangerous. It's actually the number 1 cause if a person on a bike is at fault for a crash is because they're riding against traffic. So we always want to be riding with traffic. If you're a pedestrian, it's different, but if you're riding in the road, you want to be going the same direction as traffic. We always want to use the rightmost lane that serves our destination. We're going to be looking at some diagrams that explain that a little bit better a little later on. Rule number 2, we always want to be predictable. We want to make our intentions clear. There's going to be less chance for something bad happening if everyone's communicating, understanding what we're doing. So we don't want to be swerving. We want to be riding in a straight line. We don't want to be swerving between parked cars where people can't see us or expect what we're going to be doing. We always want to be signaling our turns. I'm going to show you all how to use your turn signals in a little bit. You always want to be looking, scanning, checking behind you before making a turn or changing lanes. Be conspicuous. That means riding where people can see you. Being visible, wearing bright clothing, like we were talking about, you know, how last night we always want to be riding with lights. Use a front white light and a red rear light, just like in a car. Reflectors. Dusk and dawn, bad weather are particular situations where visibility is going to be really low. Make eye contact. Remember, we're all people. You got to look at each other, communicate. This says typically you should not ride on sidewalks. Pretty much always you should not ride on sidewalks. It's actually against the law if you're an adult to ride on sidewalks. If you're under 15, it's okay. You're small, you can't be seen. But if you're 15 or older, you need to be riding on the road. And if you must take your bike, you know, sometimes there's situations the bike lane's blocked. There's construction. The road is just really daunting to ride on. Maybe you're tempted to get on the sidewalk. If you're going to get on the sidewalk, you need to get off your bike and walk it, because the sidewalk's for pedestrians. Another rule, think ahead. You want to be anticipating what drivers, pedestrians, other people on bikes are going to be doing. Paying attention. Watch out for turning vehicles right outside the door zone. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. We always want to be looking out for debris, potholes, any other road hazards. You know, Mardi Gras beads are a big problem here. They got those spiky metal things that come up out of the beads. Lots of flats in Mardi Gras season. Crossing railroad tracks or streetcar tracks at a right angle, perpendicularly. Because if you're riding like this and you go over the tracks, your bike's gonna get locked into those tracks, and that's gonna be a really nasty wipeout. It's happened to a lot of us in New Orleans. Another rule for the road, be prepared, ride ready. So as we discussed last night, you always want to do your ABC quick check before you ride. That means checking your air, your brakes, your chain, making sure your bolts and quick releases are tight. Carry any tools or supplies that you might need on your ride, and wear your helmet because we want to protect our brain. All right, we'll just go over a little bit about bike handling. When we get to meet in person, hopefully we can actually do this on our bikes and y'all can feel and practice this on your own bike. But I'm just gonna kind of go over some tips for handling right now while we're talking virtually. So getting on and off your bike, this is super important. Having a confident start also when you're riding is super important. So let me just show y'all a little tip for getting on and off of your bike. So if you have sort of a step-through frame, like this, it might feel a little awkward to kind of like put your whole leg over it, right? So one simple thing you can do is just lean your bike over, and then it's gonna be a lot easier, and then you can push your bike back up once you've gotten your leg over the bike. Another tip for getting started, you know, if say you're riding in the road, you have to stop at a red light or a stop sign, you know, you can't accelerate as fast as you can in the car. So one tip for having a nice, strong start when you're riding is doing something we call the power position. And that's simply just, hope y'all can see this, shifting your pedal up. I'm gonna show you all the video in case you can't see as well. But shifting your pedal kind of to the up position, so when you get started, you get a nice forward push. And it's gonna keep you from, you know, if you go get on your bike after this, try feeling the difference between having your pedal up from that starting position versus your pedal down. If you start with your pedal down at the bottom, you might kind of wobble a little bit getting started. But if you start with it up, you're gonna give yourself that nice forward momentum. And another thing about, having that strong start is that riding confidently and competently is going to send the message that you belong on the road. You're a vehicle to be respected on the roadway. Okay, and then steering in a straight line. If started in motion carefully, a bike without a rider can coast all the way across a parking lot before it eventually falls down. So your job is to use small motions to steer the front wheel as little as possible to keep the bike directly under your center of gravity. So you always want to be looking up and let the bike work for you. Scanning. Scanning is just kind of the act of looking around, checking what's going on around you in the road. You always want to be aware of that, right? Vulnerable road user on our bike. So when you're riding in traffic, you need to be predictable and communicate with the drivers when you're going to change your roadway position. So you can do this by scanning, looking behind you, and then signaling your turn when it's safe to do so, letting people know your intentions. So you can scan to check for overtaking traffic or to see that you're clear before merging or changing lanes. And so when we meet in person, hopefully we can practice this scanning, try practicing it, on both shoulders. An important skill is to be able to, keep your straight line while being able to look and not turning that whole bike with you just when you're turning your head. You want to keep that straight line of movement. Signaling. So does everybody know their turn signals here? Let me show. So when you're riding, just like in a car, we don't have turn signals, so we have to use our hands. And these actually come from before cars had blinkers. People would stick their arm out of their car window in order to signal. So our traditional signals are, this is our left turn, and then this is our right turn, and this is our stopping turn. So these are all done with your left hand. So everyone can try that. Left, right, and stopping. Now, in New Orleans, you'll see a lot of people just pointing to the right instead of doing that kind of angled right turn. Either one is accepted as a signal to the right. The point is that you want to be communicating and making your intentions clear. And also another signal that's common for stopping is sort of a raised up closed fist. You'll see this a lot in like group rides. So the person in the front, their stopping signal is going to be visible to the people behind them. So if you're in a big group ride, you don't want to cause a pileup. You need to let people know you're stopping. So you can hold up your hand and do that stopping signal. And other ways that you can signal are like if you're riding with other people, do a verbal signal, say stopping, slowing down, hazards, things like that. Shifting's really useful, especially in hillier places, but even in New Orleans, like if you're carrying a heavy load, like I worked as a pedicab driver for a long time, and that kind of job, you're constantly shifting to adjust for your weight. And it's I found it really helpful also just starting and stopping on my regular bike. It'll help you get started a lot more quickly if you downshift when you're getting started, and then you shift up into a higher gear. I know I used to always get mixed up what a high gear was versus a low gear. One thing that I thought of that helped me remember it more was the higher the gear, the harder it is going to be to pedal. The lower the gear, the easier it's going to be to pedal. So if you're going, down a hill, you can be in a really high gear, but if you're going up a hill, you want to make it easier. And some shifters, like index shifters, they might have numbers. And so you can know that higher number means it's going to be a higher gear. You're going to work harder to pedal, but you want to shift into, if you're going on a long straight path for a long time, you can shift into that higher gear, and that's going to help you move more efficiently and help you get further faster. You ever see someone who looks like their wheels are just like spinning, they're just in too low of a gear. So shifting is actually really useful, and that's something that will we would practice in our on-bike drills as well. And this is kind of a nice visual of what that looks like. So you want to make sure if you have gears on your bike, your chain's going in this nice straight line. You don't want your chain to be stretched diagonally from your chain ring to your cassette. So you always want to make sure your chain's in that straight line. Okay, and this is an example. So when it's getting harder to pedal, for example, riding uphill, you want to shift into an easier or a lower gear. And if you have shifters that tell you what gear you're in, it'll say 1 on the right side and 1 on the left side. So just kind of, if you haven't, New Orleans is flat, it's totally okay if you just want to ride on 1 gear all the time, but try playing around with your shifters, experimenting, when you're going from a stopping position in a lower gear and then moving up to a higher. And you want to make sure you never shift while you're stopped. You always want to be pedaling, because if you try to shift your gears when your bike isn't being moved, it might mess up your chain, it might come off. So you only want to shift while you're moving and while you're pedaling. Okay, and this is a visual of what it looks like to be in a higher gear. And take a, this is like, sometimes it's a little hard to associate this visual with your actual bike. So just as you're riding, look down at your chain, look at your gears and see what the higher gears look like and how those feel different from each other. This is an example of what you don't want to do, like that diagonal line that I was talking about. This is a nice diagram that kind of demonstrates that scanning act that I was talking about, the act of looking over your shoulders. So here you see the person on a bike, all these little green beams coming out from them represents them scanning, noticing all these different cars coming from different directions. You always want to be communicating your intentions to others and make sure you maintain that straight line while you're scanning. Here's another diagram of the signaling. You always want to scan first before you signal. Make sure you know what's coming. You want to signal approximately 100 feet before your turn. You want to let people know your intentions well before you make that turn. Make sure they see you, know what you're going to do. Hold it up. Sometimes when I'm working with kids and I teach them scanning, they'll just wait till like they're already turning and then they just fling their arm up. Someone's just going to think that you're waving hello. They're not going to actually see that you're trying to indicate that signal. So you want to hold it up for long enough to make sure people are going to see it, and then scan again just to make sure no car is just zooming up out of nowhere. So any questions about this section? I'm going to go back to that video so y'all can see a demonstration of that starting and stopping. So yeah, feel free to chime in the chat.
When you hear people say something is as easy as riding a bike, they've probably forgotten about starting and stopping. Here are some tips to help you safely on your way. To start riding, straddle the bike without sitting on the seat. If you can't do this comfortably and are sitting on the frame, the bike is probably too big for you. Choose whichever pedal is most comfortable for you to start with and move it into an upright position. In one smooth motion, push the pedal down, ease yourself back onto your seat, and put your other foot on the other pedal. Don't be worried if it's a bit of a struggle to find the other pedal at first. Just remember, practice helps. Next up, stopping. You want to try and stop when one foot is at the bottom of the pedal stroke. Stop pedaling and shift your weight so it's more on that pedal than on the seat. Then squeeze both of the brake levers equally. Don't grab the brakes too hard. You want to come to a gradual stop. Once you have stopped, slide forward off the seat and put one foot on the ground. Make sure your brakes are stopping you, not your feet. If you are riding in traffic, it's a good idea to get in the habit of setting the pedal in the upright position right after you stop. That way, you're always ready to go again when the light changes or traffic starts moving again. The League of American Bicyclists, creating better bike education for everyone. When you hear people say something is as easy as riding a bike.
Cool. So, all right, everyone's back on the PowerPoint now. Okay, so y'all saw how that the person on the bike, he was starting and stopping pretty efficiently. You saw how he shifted his pedal back up to that high point while he was waiting for the red light, and he was able to just get started right away. So if you could just practice that, you just start doing it without even thinking about it. And that'll help give you that strong, confident start. All right, so let's get into the real principles of traffic law. And I see this question about sidewalks here, and we're gonna get into that a little bit more as well. All right, so let's just talk about how we position ourselves on the roadway. Where do we ride on the road? Do we share the lane or take the lane? Okay, so that concept of taking the lane means, you're exerting your right to the road. As a vehicle on the road, you are entitled to the space you need to operate safely on the roadway. And it's actually a law that, in Louisiana, vehicles need to be 3 feet away from you for a safe passing distance. So if a road is not, or a lane is not wide enough to share, where you and a car could be sharing that lane with 3 feet in between you, not very many roads in New Orleans are that wide, I'll tell you. Most roads are pretty narrow. Most roads in New Orleans, it is actually safer for you to do what's called taking the lane. That it means, like I said, exerting your right to ride, more in the middle of the road, occupying the space you need to safely operate. So our lane positioning, this just means where we position ourselves in the lane. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our speed positioning, how we position ourselves in relation to different vehicles or other people on bikes operating at different speeds. We're going to talk about how to change lanes and our positioning within the intersection. So a person on a bike has a basic right to the road. You're entitled to the space you need to operate safely, and the safest place to position yourself may be in the middle of the lane, like what this person on the bike is doing here. We'll get into that a little bit more. So speed positioning. So just like, if you're driving on a highway, slower moving vehicles are going to be on the right, and faster moving vehicles are going to be on the left. So if you are overtaking another vehicle, whether it be another person on a bike or whatever, you want to be passing on the left. Same rules apply. If we all follow that, simple principle, there's going to be less crashes, right? So pass other vehicles on the left, other people on bikes. If you're, someone's going really slow in the bike lane and you want to get past them, you're going to let them know you're passing them and pass them on the left. This is a really good diagram of how you're going to scan and signal in order to change lanes. So you're going to see the person, they're coming, if you look at the bottom, you see first they're scanning, they're noticing that that car behind them. See, they're noticing scanning there. So they're scanning and then they're signaling well ahead of the turn. So they're signaling about 100 feet ahead of their turn, holding up that signal for at least 5 seconds or so, making it clear to that car behind them that they're intending to move over to that left lane so they can make that left turn. So remember, you always want to be going the rightmost lane that's serving your destination. And sometimes that can mean the left lane, as what's happening in the case for this person on a bike right here. So they're scanning, signaling, scanning again, yielding to any oncoming traffic, of course, and moving smoothly and you're predictably, not moving any kind of erratic fashion, right? So this is the best way you can change lanes to go to the destination you're trying to get to. I love this diagram. This is about intersection positioning. So you're going to communicate so much to other people on the road by where you position yourself on the road. So here you can see there's 3 people on bikes, and they're each going in a different destination. So they're positioning themselves in a different place on the lane according to where their destination is. So this person on the right, they're turning right. So they're positioning themselves on the right side of the lane. That's communicating to other people around them that they're making that right turn. The person in the middle is going straight. Okay, so they don't want to have someone come up and turn in front of them. So they're gonna do what we were talking about, taking the lane, occupying that assertive position in the middle of the lane in order for them to continue straight. Whereas the person on the left, they're making a left turn. So the safest place for them to be in order to make that left turn is actually more on the left side of that lane. Does that make sense to everybody? And again, so here's some different examples of being in the rightmost destination that, or rightmost lane that serves your destination. So like I said, sometimes that's a few lanes from actually the right edge of the road. Here's the situation. This is more advanced traffic situation. So if you guys do the on-bike class with us, we'll try to ride around in different, more complex intersections like this. Here we have 2 right turn only lanes, but our person on a bike here, they're going straight. So actually the rightmost destination serving them is that lane that's the 3rd lane in from the right edge. So this is a situation again where they're gonna be scanning and signaling to move over to that lane to continue straight. And as it says here, you can always get off your bike and navigate as a pedestrian. If it's a really scary, high traffic, high speed road, don't feel like you have to do it. You can always get off your bike, walk it on the sidewalk. And you can also do what's called a box turn. So, maybe if this person, they didn't feel confident to do that signal and scan over to that lane, they could get off their bike, and cross at the intersection instead. Okay, we always want to, wait at red lights. We need to follow the laws, just like other vehicles on the road. Don't try to squeeze your way up from the front. You always want to wait, position, and turn. So just like this person's doing, they're taking their assertive position, taking the lane, just as any other vehicle. And like we said, other vehicles on the road are going to respect you more if you're also following the law. So the safest thing to do is wait for the traffic to move, because you don't want to be trying to, squeeze your way up to the front and then all the cars get a green light and they start going and you're stuck in a bad position. So right turn and through lanes. So like we said, if you're turning right, you want to position yourself in the rightmost third of the lane. So that's kind of typically the distance you want to be from the edge. So as we said, it's actually law that you want to be 3 feet away from vehicles. Vehicles are supposed to give you 3 feet when passing. So you want to be about 3 feet from that right edge, because that's going to give you that assertive position in the lane where, if it's a narrower lane, a car is not going to pass you because it's unsafe for them to do so. So it's typically where you want to be riding if you're riding on a road without a bike lane. If you're traveling straight, position yourself in the leftmost third of the lane. And this is for a right hand turn only lane, because this is one of the most dangerous situations for people on bikes. A lot of people on bikes have been killed this way in New Orleans. Some of y'all might remember the crash that happened at Elysian Fields in St. Claude a few years back. A cyclist was going in the uptown direction on St. Claude, and a big 18-wheeler truck was turning right onto Elysian Fields, you know, the person on the bike was going straight as they had the right to do, but they got caught up in that big truck turning right. So you always want to position yourself on that outside so that cars turning right aren't going to be getting in your path. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, same thing for double right turn lane, same principle. So you're gonna get on the other side, so you're not gonna be, you know, in a conflicting path for those cars that are turning right. Always you wanna be in the rightmost lane serving your destination. Kind of same thing with multiple left turn lanes. Remember the lane rules, select the rightmost lane serving you, and select the appropriate lane positioning based on any additional destinations that lane might serve. One-way streets with 2 or more lanes. We have a few of those in New Orleans as well. So if you're making a left turn from a one-way street onto another one-way street, it's easier to ride around the corner on the left. Okay, on and off ramps. This is like high-level advanced traffic navigating stuff. We have some of these in New Orleans. Thankfully now I think most of them are actually marked with a bike lane and painted painting signals. But I can think a couple of these. There's one like on Common, or it's right actually where it turns into 2-lane avenue. There's an on-ramp. That's actually a situation where you're going to see a left side bike lane. We'll talk a little bit more about those too. But this is a situation where, you know, there's an on and off ramp merging in with you. Cars are going to be coming really fast. There's another situation like this, just where the Lafitte Greenway meets Orleans Avenue, where it turns right before Basin, where, you know, the Greenway kind of spits you off onto Orleans Avenue, but there's all these cars going really fast coming off of I-10. So in that situation, you want to be doing a lot of signaling and scanning to make sure those cars can see you before you move over and take your place on the right side of the road. So you got to be really assertive in this situation. Pay attention both sides, be visible, predictable, and follow the same principles we've been discussing. Okay, so riding on sidewalks is illegal. So if a police officer tells you to get off your bike and ride on the sidewalk, they don't know the law. I should mention also, so there's a resource called Bike Law Louisiana, and they actually put out some really handy little cards with a lot of the basic laws pertaining to people on bikes. You can get them at most bike shops around New Orleans, and you can check out their website for all the same kind of information. Those are really great to have with you if someone ever tries to tell you the law. That's not really the law. But like I said, if you're an adult, it is illegal to ride on the sidewalk. You should be getting off your bike and walking it. And this is because motorists aren't expecting you to come from the sidewalk, right? So if you're riding, you know, so like in this diagram here, you're riding on the sidewalk, the car is not looking for a bike speeding out from the sidewalk. They're looking at the road for other cars. They're not going to be looking for you on the sidewalk on a bike. So it's going to be very dangerous for that reason. And then if you really have to choose to ride on the sidewalk, but you shouldn't, make sure you go slowly, because the sidewalk is meant for people walking. You know, there's people with little kids running around. There's elderly people, you know, wheelchairs, baby carriages. So make sure you're going to be respectful for pedestrians, because that's the space meant for them, not for vehicles like bikes. So know the law. Okay, any questions about some of those principles we just talked about before we go on to infrastructure? Okay, so let's talk about some of the different kinds of infrastructure you might see, and this is changing all the time right now in New Orleans. Actually, We're going to see a lot more protected bikeways coming over the next couple of years of the city's new Moving New Orleans initiative. They actually just completed some new protected bikeways over in the West Bank and Algiers, and you're going to see a lot more coming on the East Bank. Like maybe some of y'all have seen the new protected bike lane on Marconi over by City Park. It's really awesome. So you're going to be seeing a lot more protected bikeways. So we're really excited about this because it's, you know, making it more accessible for folks who don't feel confident to do, you know, that scanning and signaling around on ramps and all that. This is going to bring, you know, more people biking, feeling safe to bike, and more people on bikes make it safer for everybody on bike. So you're going to start seeing more protected bike lanes. We have some of these. You know, like on Orleans, which I mentioned, on Baronne, on Tulane Avenue. There's a few spots around New Orleans now, which is really awesome because a few years ago I could only think of like barely any. So this means there's an actual physical barrier between you and the rest of the vehicular traffic, the car traffic. There's an actual physical barrier, whether it's these sort of flex posts like you see here. Sometimes it's planters or different kinds of things, but there's going to be that actual physical barrier. Sometimes you see what's called parking protected bike lanes, which you might start seeing more of in New Orleans. And that means the parked cars are actually on the kind of more towards the middle of the road. So the line of parked cars is serving as a buffer between the bike lane and the moving vehicular traffic. Okay, and here's an example of that sort of parking protected bike lane. So we had one of these actually, Bike Easy did a pop-up sort of bikeway demonstration about a year and a half ago. It was called Connect the Crescent. We did this on Baronne Street sort of as a temporary installation just to show people what could be possible. But here you see a two-way protected, parking protected bike lane. And you'll see it, we don't have too many two-way protected bike lanes in New Orleans, but there is one when you're getting on and off the Lafitte Greenway at Orleans. You'll see that there. And that's a situation where you got to pay extra attention because bikes are coming from both directions. So you got to be paying attention to make sure you stay on the right side. Bike boxes. So this is another kind of infrastructure you're starting to see more of in New Orleans as well. And this bike box sort of provides a safe place for you to actually wait. So like we were talking about, you know, on a bike, you can't always accelerate as quickly as you can in a car. So if you're waiting for a green light, sometimes you find yourself in kind of an awkward position where, you know, if you're in front of a car, you feel like, oh, I'm not getting up to speed in time. This car is going to be mad at me. So this bike box gives you a safe place to wait in the intersection, a designated place for bikes to be on the road, taking your place in the lane, and it gives you that little extra time to get started while you're pedaling. And it also makes it safer for you if you intend to make a left-hand turn from that intersection. It kind of gives you that extra buffer space and time in order to make that turn. I can think of a couple of these in New Orleans. There's one, again on Tulane Avenue before that on-ramp. So it's meant to make it a bit safer in that situation. I can think another one on Camp near Melpomene, I think it is. So it's another kind of bike infrastructure that you might see and maybe be seeing more of here in New Orleans as well. Some other bike facilities you might see, left side bike lanes. Again, there's one of those on Tulane Avenue right before that bike box, and that's pretty rare, but you might see that in a situation like avoiding. That's because that on-ramp is happening on the right side. So there's a left-hand bike lane to protect the people and bikes from the traffic merging up onto that on-ramp. Buffered bike lanes, we have some of those in New Orleans. I can think of some on, I think there's some St. Bernard, again, Basin, Baronne Street. So buffered bike lane, you don't have that physical barrier like you have in the protected bike lanes, but it's a buffer of typically at least 3 feet. And that's going to kind of just provide an extra space from you and the car traffic. Raised bike lanes, we don't have any of those in New Orleans, so maybe if any of y'all have been to Europe or out west where they have big, wider streets, you might see some raised bike lanes, and a lot of times they're actually up at the same level as the sidewalk, so extra protection and separation from that car traffic. Any questions about bike facilities or any kind of bike lanes, bike infrastructure you might have seen here or anywhere else? Okay, so we'll just talk a little bit about some of the hazards you might encounter when you're out there on the road. All kinds of things you got to be ready for, right? So here's some risky behaviors you want to be aware of. So like we talked about, riding on sidewalks, dangerous. Cars aren't going to be expecting you to come out from that part of the intersection. Riding the wrong way against traffic. We are traffic, so we always need to be going in the same direction as traffic. That is a law. You could get a ticket for riding against traffic, and it's very dangerous because you can't see signs, signals, but most importantly, cars aren't going to be expecting you to be coming from the wrong way. We have lots of one-way streets in New Orleans, so if a car is waiting to cross a big road and they see all this traffic coming from this way, they're looking this way, they're not going to be looking for you coming from this way. It can present a very dangerous situation. So we always want to be paying attention to stop signs, traffic signals for anyone, however you're getting around. And you don't want to fail to yield when you're turning, especially for motorists turning left or right across the path of a person on a bike. Okay, and these are our 5 layers of safety. So our first layer of safety is being in control of your bike. So this is why in our on-bike class, we practice our bike drills so you can know how to handle your bike confidently in all kinds of situations if you have to avoid a hazard suddenly. So you don't want to fall, collide with others. About half of adult bicyclist crashes are single rider falls. Thankfully I've never had a real crash of a car, but I've crashed because of my own error. But if you can skillfully be in control of your bike, you're gonna make that a lot less likely to happen. You wanna be able to also know how to fall, know how to jump off your bike if you know you're losing control. You wanna do it, if you can skillfully start and stop and signal, maneuver your bike smoothly, you're gonna avoid falling and running into other people, dogs, cars, whatever. Parked cars, light posts, balcony poles. Layer 2, obey the law. As we discussed, we don't want to cause crashes. For adult bicyclists, half of the car bike crashes are caused by bicyclists who are making unsafe decisions, such as riding against traffic. So we want to follow laws, obey our signs and signals. And use our correct lane. We talked about our lane positioning. Communicate. Okay. And again, positioning, we want to discourage others' mistakes. Motorists' unsafe decisions cause half of the car bike crashes, the other half. So know when to control the lane or when to share it. And use your lane position to tell drivers what you're doing. Okay, so they're not going to be surprised or be upset. Discourage them from making right hooks. That's when you're going straight and a car's turning in front of you. Left crosses, other bad movements. So over 90% of the crashes can be avoided with these first 3 layers, okay? But if all else fails, you might need to use one of your avoidance maneuvers. And this is something that we practice on the bikes as well. So if something happens and you need to avoid it, all else fails, and you're faced with a critical situation, you need to understand how to maneuver your bike to avoid crashing, or at least limit the consequences of that crash, you know, so make it where you're just going to get a couple scrapes instead of a fatal crash, right? So, and then, you know, if everything else fails, you want to be able to survive a crash if it does happen. So if you're involved in a crash and you need those passive safety devices that'll help you survive, this means, you know, wearing your helmet. And that means making sure your helmet isn't expired and making sure that it's fit on your head properly. A helmet that's too loose is like not even wearing a helmet at all, because if your helmet's loose and I can just push it and expose my forehead or the back of my head, might as well not be wearing a helmet. And so make sure your helmet's fitting you. And other things that can help are gloves. So, you know, in case you do crash and fall, you know, your hands are going to be the first thing that you instinctively are putting down on the ground. So gloves can help minimize any injury that might happen on your hands. And glasses are really great when you're riding. In New Orleans, I know like a lot of times like particles can get kicked up, little pieces of glass, rocks, whatever, can get in your eyes. So glasses are a good way to protect your eyes as well. All right, let's talk about some of the types of hazards that you might be encountering out on the road. So you're going to encounter some surface hazards in New Orleans for sure. So metal surfaces, sometimes there's big metal grates that are wider than your bike tires, so you don't want to get stuck in those. So always be paying attention to the surfaces that you're traversing. Cracks, pavement joints, and rails. So like I said, streetcar tracks are a big one. You always want to make sure if you're riding, even if you're going the same direction, if you need to, so say these are some streetcar tracks and you need to make a left turn, make sure you're not crossing like this, because your wheels are just going to get locked in the indent of those tracks. That's going to be a nasty wipeout, okay? Because you're not going to be able to maneuver around that. Your bike's just going to be locked into the indent of those streetcar tracks, and you're just going to wipe out, and that's going to be a bad fall. So you're going to make sure that, you know, you're always trying to cross it perpendicularly at that right angle. That's for any kind of longitudinal crack as well. So dooring, this is a huge issue. There have been people killed in New Orleans from getting doored. So, you know, and by getting doored, that we mean what's kind of indicated in this picture here. That means someone colliding with someone opening their car door because they didn't look before they open. It is the responsibility of the person in the car to look before they open, but as we know, that doesn't always happen. So as you see here, it's actually safer for you if you're riding in a bike lane like this to actually ride on that outer edge of the bike lane, because you know, that will keep you from being in the possible path of someone swinging open their car door. You know, so, and as we said, we always want to be 3 feet away from cars. And that's also about the width of a car door, right? So if we don't have a buffered bike lane that's giving us that space between the bike lane and the car, we want to be riding more on the outer edge of the bike lane, as you see here. And I'll show you guys one trick that we also teach classes to drivers. We've done some classes with school bus drivers, with Lyft and Uber drivers. We've done classes with the hop-on, hop-off bus drivers. But one tip that we teach drivers, and if any of y'all are drivers too, is to always look before you open. One technique is called the opposite hand technique, and that is, it means using your opposite hand to open your car door. So instead of just sort of instinctually flinging the car door open like this, I'm going to use my right hand to reach over and open the car door, and that's going to force me to look behind to see if anybody's coming. There's actually a good campaign called Look Before You Open, and they hand out little magnets and stickers you can put on your car to remind yourself. But yeah, just try practicing, teaching yourself to use your opposite hand, and that's gonna, you know, always force you to look to see if anyone is coming. So always look before you open your car door. And then if you're riding your bike, if you see some indicators that someone's in the car, could be, you know, the engine's running, the lights on, you see somebody in there, So if you see any of those things, that can be an indicator that someone might be about to open their car door. So be especially cautious if you see somebody sitting in a car, because they might just fling their car door open without looking. So that's another reason it's safer to actually ride on that outer edge of the bike lane there. Any questions about dooring? Like I said, it has been, a cause of fatal crashes in New Orleans. There's a situation where on Claiborne near Esplanade, someone was killed because they were trying to avoid getting doored and they had to swerve out into traffic, right? So another reason we never want cars to park in bike lanes as well. Okay, so, and then another hazard is, visibility. As we said, dusk and dawn are times where there's going to be a lot lower visibility. It's your eyes are having trouble transitioning with a different light, so you always want to make sure you're using your lights, being extra cautious in those times, and as well as inclement weather. And of course, watch out for random objects on the road. You never know what's going to be thrown onto the middle of the road here. So just always be paying attention and looking ahead for what's coming. Okay, any questions on all that? All right, we're doing pretty good. Okay, and then just a few more advanced tips. So riding with a group, this is also something we'll practice in our on-bike class, but if you're riding with others, you want to be communicating together and pointing out hazards. So like we said, if you're going to pass somebody, ring your bell, also required by law, a noise-making device on your bike. So ring your bell and tell them on your left, passing on your left. So that can give them an indication you're coming. So, because bikes are pretty quiet. It's not like a car where you can usually hear someone coming behind you. So if you're going to overtake another person on a bike, be courteous and let them know that you're coming. So yeah, another, point out any hazards if there's potholes, bumps, so sometimes if you're just riding over a group, you're just having a good time, being social, which is awesome, but sometimes you kind of stop paying attention. So definitely point out hazards for people behind you. If a car is coming up from behind you, people say car back, or if a car is coming from ahead, say car up. If you're slowing down or stopping, announce that verbally as well. Okay, multi-use paths. So we have some of those in New Orleans as well. So examples of that would be the Lafitte Greenway, really awesome way to get from the edge of the French Quarter up to Bayou St. John. So that's a different situation where we're actually the fastest vehicles on the road because this is a path that we're sharing with pedestrians. So this situation, we always want to make sure we're passing pedestrians on the left side, always being courteous, announcing that we're coming, not riding at crazy fast speeds. If you want to be riding really, really fast, you probably shouldn't be riding on the Greenway. You could be riding on the road. The levee paths, the river levee paths are another example of multi-use paths, or some of the paths in City Park or Audubon Park. So yeah, as we said, be courteous, know the rules of the trail, announce when you're passing, be extra cautious at intersections. So I know some of the intersections on the Lafitte Greenway can be pretty tricky, especially the crossings at Broad Street, Claiborne. So just be extra cautious because sometimes people aren't looking out the same way for a trail crossing as they would be for a regular intersection crossing, right? And again, be predictable. And don't use more than half the width of the trail. It's for sharing with others, right? Rural riding, another more advanced topic. If you are going to be, going out on some rural rides, some roads can be narrower. They might not have any shoulder. Traffic's going to be going a lot faster, so be extra cautious about that. if you're riding on kind of like a state highway, you might encounter what's called a wind blast. And a wind blast is, you know, if a really big truck passes you at sort of a high speed, it might be enough to actually knock you off your bike. So in a situation like that, you want to make sure you're extra, you know, you're in extra control of your bike to prevent that from causing you to be unstable or causing you to have a crash. And of course, always be polite. Okay. And then if you're doing any long distance riding or touring, which is a really cool way to travel. You know, if you were here yesterday, I mentioned that I once did a 2-month bike ride with all of my camping stuff on my bike. Really cool way to see a lot of the world if you choose to do that kind of traveling. But you know, making sure you're pacing is good. One thing I didn't mention is cadence when you're pedaling. So cadence is sort of the rotations per minute, or RPM. About 50 or to 70 rotations per minute is kind of what you're going to be going for typically to have a nice steady pace. If you guys do complete the full smart biking class, there's an exam at the end. So if you do want to go on to become a league cycling instructor, you have to pass that exam. That's one of the questions on the test. I'll just give you a little hint. 50 to 70 RPM. So that's kind of a good pace you want to be aiming for as you're shifting your gears. Drafting is sort of the act of, you know, as these folks are doing, they're all lined up and you're kind of catching the wind from the person in front of you, and that actually makes it a lot easier for you to pedal. Hills, climbing, descending, just remember always be shifting your gears appropriately, and it's going to be a lot easier for you to climb and descend over those hills. Not too many of those in New Orleans, but you might have to do it on the Jeff Davis path or the new protected bike lane on Broad Street. There are some limited access highways you might encounter, so just know your state laws. But as we said, you know, bikes are vehicles. We have the right to ride on basically any road that cars do, except for interstate highways, or unless it's otherwise marked, some of the bridges. But pretty much any other road, you as a person on the bike have a right to be riding on that road. With some limited access highways, you might want to ride on the shoulder. And again, just watch for debris and the wind blast from large trucks. And this is just sort of a little diagram of some of the hazard avoidance maneuvers that we would practice in the on-bike class. So the quick stop, and that is the idea of just being able to stop quickly in case of a hazard you're going to encounter very suddenly. And with the quick stop, what you're going to want to do is use both your brakes and then shift your weight back. So it's kind of like you're flinging your body. You want your butt to go back over your seat. And that's going to make you stop so quickly, you might actually just fall to the side, which is better than perhaps crashing into a car, right? So these are some things that you can practice. And if you check out the League website, there's some videos on kind of practicing all these maneuvers. The rock dodge is another maneuver that we practice. And this is, say you're riding and then all of a sudden you see some sharp object or rock or whatever on the road, and being able to maintain your straight line of travel, but quickly flicking your handlebars to the left and to the right to avoid that rock or whatever you're trying to avoid in your path without it, you know, derailing your whole direction of travel. Avoidance weave is another maneuver that we practice. If you're encountering like a whole series of hazards, like a bunch of broken glass scattered all over the road, and you don't want to get a flat tire. So in that situation, you want to be really looking up and looking ahead, and, you know, practicing leaning into your bike in order to kind of maneuver around all of those, but still without, you know, losing that straight line of travel. And then the instant turn or the quick turn is probably the most advanced and very tricky maneuver that we practice on our bike. And that's in a situation if you You know, so say you're going pretty quickly and all of a sudden a car just cuts you off unexpectedly. It's actually easier to turn than to stop if you're going at a high speed. So it's going to be actually safer for you to sort of turn with the car than, you know, trying to stop at such a high speed. So in that situation, you're going to actually, so say you have to quickly turn right, you're going to actually do a little bit of a lean to the left, and that's going to allow you to turn more sharply to the right. So these are all just things that you can try to practice on your own, or if you join us for the on-bike class, we'll be practicing these in person. But just kind of, you know, practice feeling these maneuvers on your bike. And if you can have good control of your bike, you're going to be able to better handle any of these kind of situations. And then again, so quick stop is stopping under control and in a short distance. Use both your front and your rear brakes, sliding your body back. Oh yeah, here's these rock dodge. Avoidance weave. Lean into your bike. Instant turn when you have no time for the quick stop. You want to turn towards the vehicle, quickly away. It feels unnatural, but it is really the safest way you can deal with that kind of situation. And it does take practice. All right, so like I said, there are some really great resources on the Bike Easy website and definitely on the League of American Bicyclists website. So as we said, the League is a really great resource for all kinds of information around safe biking, bike advocacy. There's all kinds of resources out there, so check out their videos and these quick guides. We have some in the Bike Easy office. If you ever come to one of our events, we'll probably have some of these little quick guide booklets that we can give you. They have lots of great info on some of the tips that we've talked about. Yeah. So any review and questions that y'all are interested? So just kind of to summarize, remember we're safest when we operate as vehicles on the road, and that means following all the laws, being predictable, being conspicuous, thinking ahead. And if we practice all these things, and if we have good control over maneuvering our bicycle, those are all things that are going to keep us a lot safer out on the road. So I hope y'all enjoyed our session 2 of the workshop. I'll stick around if you guys want to chat some more or have any more questions on anything. And we're going to be doing some more of these online workshops this Saturday at 11. We're going to be doing one specifically on maintenance. So if you missed the workshop yesterday, we're going to cover some of the maintenance stuff that we talked about, as well as how to fix a flat tire. And then we're going to do another one on sort of the rules of the road that we discussed today, the following Saturday, and then one on the bike infrastructure that we talked about the Saturday after that. And so we're trying to also kind of loop all these workshops into the Bike Easy April Challenge. So let me throw in a link for that as well. So this is happening all through April. Normally we would have a big bike to work day event in April where we have all these group rides and special events, but the challenge is still on, so we're just encouraging folks to do solo rides this month. But you can actually sign up for the Bike Easy Challenge, and it's sort of a way of encouraging you to get out your bike on your bike and ride. And so you can log your rides. You can download an app for your phone that kind of tests when you're riding and logs your rides automatically, or you can do them manually. And so by doing that, you can actually get prizes. So sign up for the challenge. It could be a fun way to participate and encourage yourself to bike and maybe win some cool prizes. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. And I'm going to also throw in the link to the feedback survey for y'all that are still here. If you didn't get a chance to fill it out, please fill out our feedback survey so we can know how to make these better in the future, and we can keep in touch. And yeah, follow Bike Easy on Facebook, Instagram to keep abreast of all the events and classes and other ways to get involved. So thanks y'all for joining us for our very first virtual workshop. I appreciate y'all for being here.
Thank you, Laura. That was great.
Thanks, Karen.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Heidi. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Heidi. Glad you joined us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. My cat is coming. All right, y'all. Well, I'm gonna end the chat unless there's any more questions. All right. Everyone have a good night.
Laura? Laura?